Welcome to Law Talk Today, a series devoted to bringing you informative and educational programs focused on issues of law, government, and community. Hello, and welcome to LawTalkToday.tv. I'm Dan Agatino, your host. Joining us in studio today is Tom Howell, Jr. of the New Jersey Herald. Tom, thanks for coming in.
Thanks a lot.
So part of your work as a reporter is to focus on legal issues, is that right?
That's right.
Tell us about your column.
Well, I have a column called Sidebar, runs every other Sunday. It started earlier this year. What I wanted to do was just kind of focus on the legal community in Sussex County, law firm, news, tidbits, things like that. And it kind of branched into different legal topics like the Fourth Amendment, what that means as far as search and seizure in a traffic stop, DWI checkpoints. So different things that Sussex County residents can relate to in their everyday life, in addition to just law firm news, things like that.
Do you find these topics personally interesting, or was it an assignment that you were given?
It was my idea that I wanted to do this because when I do my regular news stories, oftentimes court stories are very solemn things, very serious things, and there's not a lot of breathing room to kind of branch out, be a little more creative. So this kind of gave me an avenue to do that. You know.
In the time that you've been doing this, have you found a really compelling story that got your mind thinking, wow, this is an interesting legal question? And if so, tell us about it.
Well, what I was mentioning before about things like search and seizure, DWI checkpoints, something like that is something that everyone's kind of been there. You don't have to, not everyone goes into a courtroom, not everyone commits a crime and ends up there, but it's something they encounter every day, you know, whether they are pulled over by a police officer. I myself was stuck once in Byram, real long traffic coming back from, you know, Christmas shopping or something like that. And I thought to myself, you know, this is a really interesting legal issue in that you're kind of balancing, you know, keeping drunken drivers off the road. At the same time, you're disrupting the lives of a lot of people.
Right. So
what is the balance there? What's the case law been to lead to that point to make that okay? It's interesting looking at those balancing tests and just fishing through that.
In the law, we often have a balancing test, and the balancing will be, well, you have a burden on one side, right? And in this case, it would be the burden of everyone stuck in traffic. I don't want to be stuck in traffic.
Right.
You want to go home, right? And then there's the benefit. I don't want to drive on the roads with many drunk people threatening myself and the safety of others. So there's a balance, and in the law that happens so often, right? So let's talk about it a little bit. Let's talk about some of the balancing tests. There's one. Another one would be maybe in a personal injury, right? People take on responsibility sometime. Like say, I go on a carnival ride, Ferris wheel, for example. And I decide, I don't need to wear this belt, I don't need to wear this safety harness, and I fall. Well, it's a balancing test. The ride operator has some responsibility, but I do too. So in your experience in writing the column and talking with other attorneys, do you think that Sussex County, we'll talk about, that the judiciary, that our laws, at least in, maybe we'll talk about criminal issues, has a good balance of?
I'd say so. I see a lot of attorneys are able to work together very well, and that there's a lot of talk about how Sussex County has that kind of camaraderie. And so what you see is prosecutors and defense attorneys getting together and coming to a solid resolution. For instance, there's a lot of focus now on pellet guns, BB guns, things like that, and how they are actually treated as actual weapons.
Yeah,
there are very serious laws about that. And so there was one case where a kid foolishly flashed a pellet gun out of I think it was a car window. He shot another person, and it's treated as a crime. And the defense attorney and the prosecutor were able to weigh, you know, that kid's future, because no one wants a criminal record, versus the interest of justice.
The seriousness of what he did.
And so what he ended up doing was, you know, say 30 days in jail, but he pled down to, you know, disorderly persons. So there's a punitive aspect, but at the same time, you know, he wanted to go to college. He didn't want his life ruined with a criminal record.
Sure.
So they were able to balance that and come out to a resolution like that. So I think in Sussex County, the fact that there is a friendly bar association, things like that, some prosecutors have been defense attorneys, both aisles. They know what the other one's expecting and how to work together.
That's very interesting because one of the partners in my law firm, Carmen Liuza, taught me something that is some attorneys and many people who are not in the field think that you have to be enemies when you go into the courtroom.
Right.
And he said one of his mentors taught him, and he carries with him today, and I hope to carry with me, that there's a difference between being an enemy and being an adversary.
Sure.
And so it's true that it could be, I'm very passionate for my client, being an aggressive advocate and fighting with the other side, and then go play golf. I don't play golf, but go out and have a drink, go be social. In Sussex County, the bar happens to be particularly friendly. That means that come around the holidays, there'll be an event, and you could be in a divorce matter or a criminal matter or with someone from the other side and sitting at the same table, you know, sharing drinks.
It's funny because one of the first things I noticed when I was in the courtroom a lot was that you go in there thinking, for a layperson who's not exposed to the courts a lot, you think of it in terms of winners and losers, you know, guilty, not guilty, the big screaming headline.
Right.
And when you're in there, you see them advocating on both sides, and then when it's, you know, timeout, judges off the bench, they're all talking about, you know, their families, you know, some backslapping, handshaking, joking around.
Sure.
You know, that doesn't mean that they don't take their points seriously when it's when they're back on, but you know, there's an understanding that they're all professionals, and there's almost you know, there has to be a little bit of that levity even amid your clients, just almost kind of a bedside manner. I can think of a few attorneys that are very good in kind of breaking that ice when they are, because this is a very serious matter that happens in that little courtroom.
You know, it is a delicate, again, going back to the balance. Now, this isn't the balance of benefits and burdens in the law, but a balance of taking your client seriously, but not letting them become morose in the moment.
Sure.
You know, people come, they're suffering, and they have difficulties, and that's why they need a lawyer usually. Sometimes it's just a happy thing, buying a new house or something, but many times it's not. And you have to take that into consideration when you're interacting with the person, but also try and find some bright side of the whole thing. Put things in perspective. Do you find that in writing your article, there's the necessary work of not making it too serious all the time?
Yeah, like I said, with the column that I do, it gives me a chance to kind of branch out and just kind of write in a different style. I did one recently about what people wear to the courtroom, and you know, you talk to a lot of attorneys, they're kind of shocked. I mean, it's really not an economic thing. You could probably get a you know, nice court appropriate outfit at Kohl's for the cost of that, you know, your Van shoes and your, you know, whatever else you're gonna wear to court instead of, you know, the tank top and the denim shorts. But I did a whole article on what's appropriate for, you know, people to wear at court, for what attorneys should wear, things like that. So there are those kind of peripheral subject matters that are kind of fun to
Some
look
courts actually will not allow people to come in if they're in shorts, tank tops, have hats on. Now there's a rule though. If you're wearing a yarmulke, if you're wearing a hat because it's a religious head covering, then you have the right to wear it. But if you're wearing a Yankees cap, which everyone should be wearing, then you have to take it off to go into court, right? And did you find that there's a lot of casual dress out there?
Definitely. I mean, and it depends on the judge. I think most judges are reluctant to say anything because they don't want it to seem like a bias, or they don't want to branch out too much. I know I've heard stories about one particular judge who used to be in Sussex County. She would tell you right up, not in my courtroom. You go home and change, and then I'll sentence you. You know? So, yeah, there's a lot of that. Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because in a court of law, it's one of the most formal settings that you could enter into, right? The judge wears a long black robe, and he or she has